Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 74 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we are coming to you once again from the worldwide headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia as we continue to look forward to having some great discussions in the coming weeks and months. We simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We have another great organization this week as we highlight the Rotary Community Garden right here in Gastonia. We have Lyn Anderson, Theresa McIntosh, and Phil Desmarais with us today. Lyn is a past president of the garden. Theresa is the grower receiver coordinator, if I said that right. And Phil is a new board member with the group. So, guys, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to get right started. We're going right to it, or right started. Lyn, maybe we'll start with you. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, anything that you would like to share.
Well, I am pretty much a native of Gastonia. I grew up here, although I was born at Camp Lejeune when my dad was in the Marine Corps. I attended both Hunter Huss and Ashley High School. After college graduation, I moved to Florida for more than 10 years, but was so excited to be able to move back to Gastonia about 30 years ago. My career has been as a certified paralegal in a law firm here in Florida and here with Parks Wilson in Belmont and Gastonia.
Okay, very good. Theresa, what about you?
I am Theresa McIntosh. I am married to Mark McIntosh and have two...
We won't hold that against you.
Okay. And I have two beautiful girls, Hope and Holly. Hope lives in San Diego right now, and Holly lives in Mount Holly and has currently started working with my husband, Mark. So that's kind of exciting. I moved here when I was in 7th grade due to my dad was the Methodist minister at First Methodist in Gastonia, and so we moved here then. So, you know, I've only been here a couple of years since I was in 7th grade. But love Gastonia and have loved raising our family here.
And I have to give a quick shout out to Holly. We are maybe customers of Mark and Holly, and it's been a big upgrade with dealing with Holly as compared to having to deal with Mark all the time on the insurance side of our business. And also, full disclosure, I am with Lyn and Theresa, a good First United Methodist parishioner myself. So maybe we should have some First Methodists on here, the church on here sometime.
For sure.
Yeah. Phil, what about you, sir?
Well, I'm originally from Massachusetts. I had an opportunity to come to Gastonia over in the late 1977. A company I worked for was opening a plant here, and I came down and did some work here in setting up the plant.
Okay.
And fell in love with Gastonia. And I said if there was ever an opportunity to move my family here, I was going to do that. And that happened in 1980. So myself and my family have been here for 42 years and really enjoy living in Gaston County.
Well, again, thank you for sharing that. Again, with Phil, I grew up with Phil's son, Chris, and also know Mike. But, yeah, Chris and I go way back. And all the way through, I think before we started recording, he reminded me that we also went to NC State together. For some reason, that I said Greer and Ashbrook, but it was also, at NC State as well. So, you know, anybody that goes to NC State's got some good blood in them, right?
Right.
No. Okay, very, very good. Exactly. Yes, got the wolf down there. So, come back to you, Lyn, maybe. Can you kind of share with what is your role or, you know, some of the things you've done with the community garden? Of course, we want to get into some people. I'm so entrenched in it from when it started. I have to remember we might have listeners out here who don't know anything about it. But kind of talk about your role, and then the next part of that question is going to be for all of you. But what is the garden? And just, you know, kind of just some general information or history or whoever's might want to cover that.
Well, I think I was asked to help with the garden because people know of my love and passion for gardening.
Okay.
So I came in as vice president. The next year I served as president. Now I'm working with Theresa with all the growers and receivers, so sort of bottom down learning this time, but it has been great. Right now I'm working with all our different growers on the crop rotation. We rotate the crops so that we don't get pests. We do as much organic gardening as absolutely possible, and we help each grower who may not, different groups, different families want to be growers, but they may not really know too much about gardening. So we provide instruction, workshops, and help them as they go along to turn out the most produce that we can for our community.
Okay. So, Lisa, maybe this question for you, and you're talking about growers and receivers. Obviously the grower part, my pea brain can maybe associate that with something, but maybe the receiver part, maybe not so much. And maybe a little history of the garden. I mean, I know it, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners don't have any idea how this came about, how it got started. Could somebody kind of go into that as well as?
I'm going to give that to Theresa.
Okay. As far as the receivers and the growers and harvesters is what we call it. The receivers are the people that receive the produce that is grown in the garden.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the growers, sponsors, or harvesters are the ones that are in charge of the beds. They do the planting, they do the weeding, they do the harvesting on a rotating basis. The receiving groups, like none of our food that we grow at the garden is used for us. Everything that's grown in the garden goes into our community. The receiving groups right now, we have 6 receiving groups. Low Ray Girls Home, Crisis Assistance Ministry, Cornerstone, Off the Streets, and Gaston Family Health Services Highland area.
Okay.
We also recently have added the community kitchen, which is done at First United Methodist Church for homeless people that we provide weekly homemade meals for. So we're giving some of the produce to them too to incorporate with that. The good thing about, there's many good things about the Rotary Garden, and we don't have enough time for us to share all our special stories, I call them my garden heroes, the people that I've met through there. But the fact that we provide the produce and it goes back only into our community is just awesome, I think.
Sure
and
it
it
is,
wasn't my idea, but I'm glad to be a part of this. And it's fresh, healthy, grown produce that people in these organizations would not normally get, probably. Right. Mostly canned stuff and that kind of thing. So that's something that we're real proud of, and they get real excited. We have 2 receiving groups that are also have their own beds there, and they grow. They're also growers and harvesters, and that's Off the Streets and Cornerstone. We have 26 beds, but it actually ends up being 77 4 by 12 foot beds, raised beds. But we have them broken down into 26 plots, if you will.
Yep.
So most of them have 3 4 by 12 sections to them, and that's what each group takes care of. And then we have 4 that only have 2. We have 1 bed that is raised, so it's accessible if people have disabilities and that kind of thing.
How does a group? We'll go back to maybe the history, but first, how does a group get involved? How do you, and who are maybe some of the groups, if you can share, that are actually sponsors or growers of the beds, and how does that happen? Because I know at one time GSM sponsored a bed, but I think that was a disaster. But how do you go about doing that?
It wasn't a disaster at all. We have, we want people to know that you don't have to be professional growers to join us. We have a lot of knowledge on our board and with our volunteers to share with people. So we encourage any of you listening to contact us in the ways we'll tell you later to join us. But we have we have churches,
Okay.
we have garden clubs, we have teens changing Gaston County.
Yep.
We have some people that are just family groups. We have had the Girl Scouts out of bed. We've had, even the Rotary Club has a couple of beds. Shield Museum has been associated with us before. Literacy Council has one. Dreamweavers, some of the other Rotaries, the Evening Rotary, Altrusa Club, W.D. Lee Company. So it's mainly civic groups, churches, organizations, family groups, and it doesn't take really.
So it's a pretty good, diverse, group of organizations, people, families, or
Exactly.
companies. Okay.
Yes.
So how can you share with our listeners then, kind of going back a step? Because I'm a lifelong Gastonia resident, and of course I know where it is. Residence or resident? You got to help me with my vocabulary today, Naomi. I know where that lot, where it is, what it used to look like.
Right.
Kind of share maybe with our listeners, kind of how did it all come about, if that's a fair question.
It was originated through the Rotary Club, and at the time, Dr. Will Current was the president of the Rotary Club, and he proposed this idea of building a garden for a club project. But when they started looking into it, it was going to require a lot of money as far as like having to put up a brick wall and do some other things. So Will just started really looking into other ways that they could get the land. So they started talking with the property owner, which was David Royster, and through many conversations, he ended up agreeing to donate the property to the Rotary Club. And then the Rotary Club received their charity status in 2014. And the property was transferred, and the garden was set into play. Right. I did read some stuff when I've been looking over some of the things that have happened with the garden. I did read that at the beginning, the Rotary Club put an article in the newspaper, in the Gazette, and asking for help with this, specifically to veterans that might be interested in helping. So that was kind of neat to read about that. So that's kind of...
Yeah, I mean, again, myself being at the time, I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Gastonia, and I happened to still be on the board at that time. But I have to give a shout out. You mentioned Will Current. He really was the driving force behind it. He did so much legwork, and it was his vision, really. Mm-hmm. And then that's kind of, there's so many things that happen right in a community when you have one person who becomes passionate about something, and then he was able to get so many people excited about it, and that's what happens. And I remember early on, even I think seems like maybe even Home Depot or was a big supporter early on with the garden. So where, in case somebody happens not to know, where exactly is the garden located?
It's on Franklin Boulevard.
406 East Franklin.
Yeah, so
almost downtown.
I don't know the address. When some people ask me, I say between Tony's and Broad Street.
Exactly.
Okay, and that's
we're on the railroad
side. On the railroad side, that's right. Matter of fact, you could almost throw a rock if you had a good arm back this direction, right? From where we're sitting right here, almost straight over to it. Mm-hmm. So again, I think it's just nice to hear a little bit of history on anything like this, of how, and I think it helps remind us that somebody with a little bit of a vision and the ability to articulate that vision, people are willing to get on board, right, and help. Because if you had told us in our club in 2012 or whenever to 2022 what has happened in that time period, we would have said, really? But it sure has. I mean, a lot has happened. Then and it's just, and the three of y'all are a good testament to that. So Phil, how did you get involved, and what is kind of your role with the organization?
Well, I'm retired. I retired in 2014, and excuse me, I worked in an office for 49 years, and I decided I want to be outside, not inside anymore. So I like gardening, yard work.
Sure.
Just being outside, and being a friend of Lyn and her husband, they saw a perfect opportunity to capture that resource and lend a hand to the garden with helping certain things that need to be done that the board takes care of, the growers and the harvesters, and they have a certain task to do, but someone needs to keep an eye on the place, make sure everything is happening the way it's supposed to, and if something doesn't happen, to fill in and back up as a resource. So Lyn asked me would I be interested in joining the board and helping out, and I said, yes. What does it involve? And she said, you'll find out.
So you were voluntold, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
It's
I'm
hard
still,
to say no to Lyn.
Yes, it is.
still finding out being here today.
Okay, good. So let's kind of maybe come back to you, Lyn, kind of get into some of, initiatives or programs or, what else. There's a lot of things I'm sure we could talk about. I'm sure we could talk about this for, I joked beforehand, 3 or 4 hours. I mean, we really could.
Yes.
But, Naomi has to get back to work, so we can't really do that. But kind of, this is going to be for all three of you, but start with you, maybe initiatives, things that you've seen, maybe even go to kind of incorporate the next question too, successes, impacts you've seen. What are you most proud of since your time on the with the organization? Was that enough, throwing enough questions at you at once?
Yes, that's quite enough questions. So for the 8 years since 2014 that the garden has existed, we have gone through so many different iterations, sort of. The pavilion was built so we can have activities there. If one of the advantages of being a grower is that your club, your group can have their meetings in the garden. It's a wonderful place to be. Also, we have 2 sheds or barns that we've built there to hold everything. Supplies have been donated. We've had so many different community organizations involved that have given to us. The last couple of years have been challenging, not just for us, but for everyone due to COVID. We raise all the funds that are necessary to keep the garden going, keep the lights on, keep the water running, amend the soil, provide training. So we depend on donations, and we've been a big partner for us during this time has been the Community Foundation. So that has been a good sponsor in the main way that we've kept our funds going the last couple of years when we had a hard time having fundraisers. But some of the things that we've done is we provide workshops for anyone who's interested in gardening. We've formed all kind of sponsorships. The Gaston County Library now has a seed bank, and we work with them on providing monthly workshops for farming. We've added composting and more natural ways to garden and more teaching in the garden. This past year, we amended all our soil. We do our soil test every year through North Carolina Department of Agriculture. We realized we needed a major amendment, and we've upped the amount of our produce from about 2,000 pounds to probably over 3,000 pounds of fresh produce this year.
Wow.
We're pretty proud of that.
That's awesome. So, Theresa, what would you add to that with your time, programs you're involved with, or just impacts that you have seen, any anecdotal stories that, I'm sure you have a lot, both of you probably have quite a few, but anything you can share, relative to that? I know our listeners would like to hear some of that.
Okay. I could have, I really had to think about this because
Sure.
there's so many special things that have happened because of my involvement with the garden in my life personally, but with so many other people. I think it's been really neat to see how groups like the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts have jumped in to help us. We have 2 things that 2 of the girls and Girl Scouts actually did their Gold Award, which is the highest level of a Scout Award in the Girl Scouts at the Rotary Garden. One was Preston Bullock put the beehives.
Okay.
So we have beehives there, and that's really exciting. So we encourage pollinators with our flower gardens. And then we also, I'm kind of partial to the...
I wouldn't let this episode go without making sure we touched on this one.
Exactly. Jane Sumner was one of the key people to get the garden going when it first started, and she and I used to play tennis together, and she approached me about the idea of a mural being painted on the wall at the garden because it was very, very unattractive.
Sure.
And so my daughter Holly, excuse me, started talking with her about that, and we do have a beautiful mural there, but that ended up being something that was so much more than we thought it was going to be, because she went to all the high school, Gaston County art teachers in the high schools and talked to them about what she would like to do and asked for their help. So that got it, all in Gaston County. And then they in turn went to their art classes and asked their students if they would be interested in submitting a drawing for the mural, and then it came back to our board, and we selected the one, and it was a young lady from East Gaston High School. But when we started doing the painting, it was amazing to see what happened those Saturdays. The kids from all the high schools, it wasn't about their school, it was about Gaston County. It was about art. It was about the garden. Well, they came for the art, and most of them didn't even know what a community garden was.
Right.
So it was very educational for high school kids, and they were so excited to be there and learn about it. And we have gotten some volunteers, from that. Since we have had to repaint, freshen it up, and so we went back to the art teacher from East Gaston, Justin Allison. He's fabulous. And he got students back together to, freshen up the wall again. And that, again, was another just great experience doing those on Saturdays all together. And parents picking them up and dropping them off, they were learning about the garden,
sure.
too. So that was one. Do we have time for one more?
Absolutely.
My absolute favorite is a garden hero to me. His name is Rusty Slayer. He came to Gastonia years ago from Rhode Island when he had had some just really hard life challenges, a divorce, cancer. He was a disabled veteran. But he came here, and things didn't really change for a while as far as good luck for him. He ended up losing a home. He went bankrupt. He was in jail for a little bit. But he got himself back together and got an apartment off of Union Road, and he was reading the Gazette one day and saw the article that the Rotary Club had put in asking for volunteers about this new project. And he said, I like gardening. I'm a veteran. Maybe this is something I could do. So he started volunteering. And another little background on Rusty is he was pretty much married to a wheelchair. He lived down Union Road, and he would practically every day go down busy Union Road on his wheelchair to volunteer at the Rotary Garden from sun up to sometimes. The police even called us a couple of times because he was there at 2 a.m. They thought somebody was trespassing. Yeah. But he just loved the garden, and he told me a couple of times that he felt like the garden was his church, that he felt in touch with God there, and he met God's people there, and they helped each other, and he said it gave me purpose, and then he was helping. And then one day he called me and he said, could you bring Holly by my apartment? Because he had a extensive garden and flowers at his own home. And so I thought he was going to show us that. And I was like, yes, absolutely. And we went there, and he wanted to present her a little bit of money to go towards the mural project. And the amount he gave wouldn't impress anybody probably, but it impacted us tremendously because he was on a very limited, budget, but he believed in it so much, and he believed in her, and he believed in the other people that came to the garden. So he was our hero. We have the bed that's right there to the right. We keep a flag there, and we have his name on that, and we even had his memorial service in the garden, and it was fabulous.
Yeah, I had the good fortune of, he came to multiple meetings of the Rotary Club during that time, and I got to spend some time with him there, and also out a few times out at the garden early on. So again, that's a really good story, and I appreciate you saying it, because I hadn't forgotten that, because I hadn't been to the garden in a while personally. But yeah, that he was a huge piece of the garden becoming what it is today. So like so many things that we talk about on our podcast here, I'm sure y'all could go on for a long time about the impacts that you have seen. So this question is maybe for all three of you, but you're looking ahead. I mean, what do you see for the garden over the next, that classic question is 5 to 10 years. Doesn't necessarily have to be 5 to 10 years. Do you see any other big changes coming, or is there, you just kind of continue to get people aware? And I do like the comment you made about, you don't have to be a professional, right, a gardener, or to get involved. I think there is this. I think some people might think that. I got news for you. If I've been involved, I pretty much kill everything I touch when it's in the ground. So, so yeah. What looking ahead? What do y'all see for the garden?
Well, one thing, I was talking to Dr. Curran about this, and he's been so happy that we've been able to keep the garden going.
Sure.
It's always something where we need volunteers. We need people to be a part of this. And you don't have to be a professional grower or a farmer in any way to do this. We want people to reach out and volunteer, and we hope they will. There's a couple of visions that I have possibly for the garden. One is just that we continue to be a positive impact in Gaston County and tie more and more organizations and people together, all walks of life. That's a big part of it. We give a beautiful outdoor space to honestly an acre that was kind of an eyesore in Gaston County. And that was part of the Rotary Club's vision, was to beautify our city, because we are right downtown, within a couple blocks of downtown. But also, that's kind of led me, there's 7 acres behind us. A railroad track runs through it, but it's undeveloped. It's rough brush that gets bush hogged a couple times a year. I have a vision that maybe some clubs in the city of Gastonia could come together. That would be a beautiful park that we could have downtown, and our garden could be incorporated as part of that park, where people could garden, learn gardening, more workshops, things for children, and we could be one of the entrances. The property fronts Broad Street and Franklin, so that could be a beautiful thing. Maybe 10 years down the road, if other people got on board with that. Another possibility is that because our beds are so big and so large, and we are producing so much now, and Gaston County is becoming more population dense. There's more people living in apartments, condominiums, townhomes. I'm in a quad now with very little place to garden. But a lot of us love gardening, is that we can probably do what we need to do in 16 of our big beds, and maybe do more leasing of 4 by 12 plots. That would still leave 30 of them for families to garden, some for themselves, and to give away maybe 20% of it to the community. Because educating the public and keeping people gardening and their love of nature is a part of our mission too. So those are some of my ideas. Okay,
that's terrific. Theresa, what about you? Anything you would add to that?
I just really hope that people hearing this, that we're getting the word out more, and that people will use the garden to go to their meetings, to be outside. You feel better when you're outside. And it's covered. It's got a ceiling fan.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's peaceful out there. The birds, the flowers. We had a ton of butterflies this year.
Yes.
And we're just doing more things. But the education is real positive too. I mean, seeing teens out there learning about growing. It's not. I mean, I saw my grandparents gardening growing up, but I wasn't really in there doing it. And it's a real love I have, and my girls are starting to pick up on that a little bit more, and that's exciting. So I think just the education and what we can provide there. We do have a lot of novice that are not novice anymore.
Yeah.
But we do have a lot of master gardeners, too, that are a wealth of information.
Yeah, it seems to me, again, this is just Stephen Long opinion, that we've become more of a convenience, processed food, inexpensive just world. And I get some of that, but there is something that's missing with exactly what y'all are doing, and just the access to the type of food that you guys are growing, right? It's and everybody doesn't have access to that easily. Is just kind of what's going through my mind. I know, Phil, you haven't been on the board as long as these two and involved as long, but I mean, what maybe the future? What kind of, besides Lyn volunteering you? I mean, what kind of got your interest in looking ahead? What do you see for the garden?
Well, personally, I enjoy the garden because, like I say, I'm retired. I've been in an office all my life. I want to be outside enjoying this beautiful North Carolina weather. And I invite other retirees who, want to be outside, but, maybe only a couple hours a day or a couple hours a week can come and help and weed a bed if necessary.
Yeah.
Just get some fresh air, some exercise, and meet some other folks. It's a perfect opportunity. I met interesting people myself in just this past summer, working at the garden. And it's I think good for retirees,
Good way to connect.
veterans, that have some time on their hand rather than sitting watching TV in the afternoon. Come out and get some fresh air and exercise and meet folks.
Is there a cost to lease a bed, or is it just the cost of the seeds, or just kind of maybe real quick share that if you can? That's just a question that came to mind all of a sudden.
We provide everything. We do have an irrigation system, so our growers don't even have to do the watering.
Okay.
And we do the soil test like Lyn was talking about. So we do all the soil amendment and provide that. The only thing that the growers provide is seeds, seedlings, or plants, whatever they decide they want to do. And there again, we don't want that to be a deterrent.
A barrier. Yep.
It's not I mean, we have
Yeah.
resources that Lyn has even found some people that locally plant and grow from seed that will provide them to us at a very good price, and that again is helping locally.
Sure.
So that is the only cost that they have.
Is this what kind of how many months a year is stuff growing out there, seasonal, or you're changing? I'm assuming what's being grown out there. Is that a fair question?
Well, we try and grow 3 seasons.
Okay.
We're developing our crop rotation so that each year a quarter of our beds will rest for one of those 3 seasons. So, but we do spring, summer, and fall crops right now. Last week we pulled over 50 pounds of carrots from one bed.
That just seems.
So we have collards, kale, turnips, and cabbage and carrots in December with freezing weather that are just doing great.
That's interesting. Okay, so it's actually maybe a longer period of time than some people might some novice like myself, a longer period of time than I would think. Just like the weeds growing at my house, it's just different.
Mm-hmm. But one thing that we would like people to know is when you are a sponsor, grower, harvester, whatever you want to call them, you're all 3 of those things. You plant. You're responsible for planting and keeping your beds weeded.
Sure.
But the harvesting is actually done on a rotation with all the growers. So you don't have to harvest your plots every week. So, it's typically 3 times a whole year that you will be responsible for actually harvesting. And you don't just harvest your own bed, you harvest either the Franklin side or the railroad side.
Gotcha.
So your main thing is to keep your bed planted and weeded, and then we all share in the harvesting of the produce.
Okay, good.
And then we have rotations for the receiving groups. They have set days. Like we harvest on Sunday nights, Tuesday nights, and Thursday nights, and then the receiving groups pick up on Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings. So it's as fresh as possible. We do have a stand outside, so sometimes if we have stuff left over, we'll bag that up and put it for anyone that's walking down Franklin to pick up.
All right. Well, very good. So, one other couple questions, and we're gonna shift gears briefly. But of course, before we finish, we'll make sure that our listeners know how to get in touch with the organization, volunteer. Where can they find more information about the garden itself? But one of the questions I like to ask, and you've already really answered this question multiple ways, but I'm going to make you answer it again anyway. So maybe start with you, Lyn. And maybe in your own words, with your experience with Gaston County and the garden, why would you say Gaston County is better because the Rotary Community Garden is here?
Well, the garden, first of all, we know that we've beautified this area for Gastonia. Mm-hmm. We keep it up. Anyone is welcome to work in the garden, to be a part of this. And as you work, I think Phil will attest to this, you will learn more about Gaston County and the other organizations and clubs and people and what they're doing and how we're all working together to make this a better place. Gastonia and Gaston County have more of a small, we're not really a small town, but we have a small town feel. Once you start to get involved and meet people, it's easy. I have many friends who aren't from here, but once they lived here for a while and they became a part of the community, they refused transfers. They wouldn't go. They wouldn't leave. So I think that we have made it a better place, knowing that all of our food is donated to proven groups who are in need, who are feeding people in our town. And then also that we feed the homeless. We have the little stand on the outside, and we forgot to mention also on the outside of the fence, we grow blueberries and blackberries, and those are for anyone. Pull in if it's the summer and take home some fresh produce.
I had forgotten that. Yeah,
and herbs. We have herbs. Too.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm. Theresa, how would you answer that question about?
I think Lyn did that perfectly.
Was pretty good.
I mean,
the first person answering that question often takes the
covers.
Yes, and we're glad she did. But yeah, all three of the things that were the initial missions of the club, we're doing that, and it's just beautiful to see, and the relationships to me, and again the garden heroes that I've met, that's just priceless.
Phil, would you add anything to that?
Again, it's community. I've been there, by myself doing a few things, and people show up, and you get to meet them and talk to them, and find out what their interest in it is, and it's sharing a community activity that you enjoy and other folks enjoy.
Okay, well, good. I appreciate you sharing. I'll just like the question that I like to kind of sum up, so to speak, what the impact is of the garden in this case. So we're going to shift gears just briefly, and then again, like I said, we'll make sure we kind of finish up with any last words you guys want to share about the garden. But we've got these questions that we ask every week because we can, and these are the questions that your family, other board members, other church members, this is what they really want to know about the three of you.
Oh, boy.
And we're going to call it the Franklin Boulevard Garden Speed Round of Questions. All right? And I'm going to make Phil go first on this one because you've been here long enough to be able to answer all these questions.
You bet.
So, Phil, what's your favorite Tony's ice cream flavor?
Chocolate.
That's
chocolate and more chocolate.
That's what I'm talking about. That's mine as well. Theresa?
Mint chocolate chip.
We got to give something like a want. There's something, I have some, I don't know, something, my mint and chocolate together is just one of those things that just makes my curl. I just can't do it. But I love you anyway. I love you anyway, Theresa. Lyn, maybe we should move on.
Oh, I have two. In the summer, it's the lemon ice cream.
Okay.
And put some of that fresh produce on there. Put raspberries or blackberries on there, and you've got something gourmet. People will follow
that's pretty
you
good.
home.
Better than
But,
mint chocolate.
Yes, but all winter, almond joy.
Really?
Oh, it's so good with the coconut,
I think
almond,
that's a
and
first.
chocolate.
I think that's a first. I don't think we've had that as an answer for that question. Lyn, Sundrop or Cheerwine?
Well, both. My daughter went to Catawba College in Salisbury, so Cheerwine's big,
yeah.
and of course we love Sundrop. I can make pound cake with both of those.
Oh, what? Oh, I've had both Cheerwine based and Sundrop pound cake. That's wrong to kind of even bring that up and not have any with you, Lyn.
That's why I brought you the sweet potato
Okay,
pie from the garden.
We'll talk about that before we finish up. Theresa, Sundrop or Cheerwine?
Cherry lemon sundrop.
Very good. Phil?
I'm sorry, they're too sweet. I'll have to stick to my Diet Coke.
I hear you. Phil, what about a favorite local restaurant?
Actually, I've got a few of them. This may sound strange, but the Greek Acropolis restaurant in Franklin Square, when my wife and I are out shopping or doing something and it happens to be around mealtime, we'll sneak over there and totally enjoy it.
Very good, yeah.
Milano's for Italian. That's
been around a very long time, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And if you want breakfast, Cracker Barrel.
Very good. And any time of the day, too, right?
Yeah.
For Theresa?
Tex-Mex. Off of Union Road,
Yep.
family owned. Can't beat it.
Very good.
Taco Tuesdays.
Lyn, how would you answer that one?
Oh, I got a couple. Smith's Soul Food,
Oh, yeah.
not
Yes.
far down Franklin from the garden,
Nope,
is
not at all.
wonderful. Venezia on Garrison Boulevard. Webb Custom Kitchen if you want to really dress up and
Yeah, that's
get
good.
out. And, of course, I love Medical Center Pharmacy lunches.
Yeah. So we need to get some advertising dollars for this episode.
Yep.
Y'all covering them all. Lyn, besides, I'm not going to let you answer digging in the dirt at the garden, but besides that, maybe a favorite outdoor activity or park or something here in Gaston County?
Well, I love hiking and just being outside. That's my happy place.
Okay.
So I love Crowder's Mountain. But there's also so many good things happening now at the Fuse, at the Honey Hunters games.
Yeah, very good. Theresa, what about you?
Hiking too, I think.
Yes.
For sure. And the parks. I like to go to the one over near Southport River that you go down through McAdenville to get to, and you go under 85.
Oh, yeah.
Seven Oaks is...
Yeah, South Fork, I think is what it's
Yeah,
called.
yeah.
It's one of the Carolina Thread Trails.
Yep. Cool. Phil, what about you, sir?
I like walking, not necessarily hiking, but the Greenway.
We have a lot of greenway here in
The
Gaston County.
Greenway, my favorite is next to where I live, is on Robinwood Road. You
Yep.
go in that way and walk all the way down to Lineberger and
Yep.
back. It's a nice
Yeah, we had
Greenway
Carolina
there.
Thread Trail on back last year, and I was stunned when they laid out and talked about how many miles are just in Gaston County. Now, the total mileage of the Carolina Thread Trail is just unbelievable, but I was shocked at how much is here in Gaston County. So, Phil, I'm going to stick with you on this to start this next question. This is my question, and there's only one correct answer, but we'll listen to others. UNC Duke or NC State?
Oh, there's no question, NC State.
That's why I asked you first. Thank you, Naomi. Theresa?
Oh, my. Okay, this is a really hard one because my dad, Methodist minister, went to Duke.
Yes, I assume
So
that.
I grew up with that, but we also grew up in Raleigh before we came to Gastonia, so I started out kind of as a Wolfpack fan. And then one of our daughters, Hope, is an NC State graduate, so
Yes.
do the Wolfie. My husband is a Carolina graduate, so I have to go with that because it pays for my house.
So, in other words, you got a lot of chaos and confusion going on at your house.
We're a house divided, but it's fun.
Lynn, what about you?
We are also a house divided. I bleed Duke blue. So many members of my family went to Duke, but my stepdaughter went to Carolina, so we have the little house divided flag. Sorry.
That's more like house. Thank you.
So you like Phil and I better because we have some wolf.
Yes, that is correct. So, Lynn, stick with you. What is something very few people know about you?
Well, maybe that I was a reluctant outdoor enthusiast. I came to it because my daughter, you'll do anything for your kids. You don't.
Sure.
So when she's 6 years old and looks at me with those big eyes and says, I just have to be a brownie. We join a brownie troop. 3 months later, the lady resigns. She's telling these 18 adorable little kids that it's just too much for her. Clarissa stands up and says, my mommy will do it. Next thing I know, we're living in Tampa at the time. I'm tramping through the sandy, marshy woods of Florida with all these other adults going through Girl Scout training. I was not a happy camper at the time, but over the next several years, I became an enthusiast of the outdoors, camping, conservation, and you do that for a couple of years, and you're going to put your fingers in the dirt and start gardening. So that would be what I would say. Get out there before you're 35 and your kids make you do it.
Sometimes it's easy. We can look back on things like that, and at the time we're like, "What is this?" But it turns out to be, something something that is better. Theresa, how about you? Something very few people know about you.
Well, that's funny that she brought that up because this was a very hard question for me to think about. I got strong-armed into Girl Scouts too, but it was one of the best things I ever did. But I asked my husband, I said, I don't know anything that people don't know about me. And he said, well, that you have the most wonderful husband in the world. And then he goes, wait, everybody knows that. So
I don't even know what to say. Would we have maybe the crickets? Mark.
That's what he said.
That is it. Actually, we are not going to accept that answer. But we'll move on because, Phil, how about you?
Never involved in the Girl Scouts, I'm sorry. But twice I was...
Girl Scout cookies?
Oh, buy the cookies, definitely.
Well, then you're involved, I guess.
But I had the opportunity to be on QVC twice over the years. This is about 15 years ago. Selling hand tools, Craftsman hand tools for the company that I work for here in Gastonia, which was Eastco Hand Tools and Danaher. And marketing folks, I'm a mechanical engineer and knew a lot about the products that we manufactured. So our marketing folks talked me into going to QVC and spending an hour live with 4 million people watching you, unscripted, talking about the tools and how they're manufactured and how well they are. And,
that's interesting. That's up in Pennsylvania somewhere, isn't it? Or is that
where you
went?
It's right outside of Philly.
Yeah.
And it's quite an experience.
I'm sure.
Did it once, and they asked me to come back again and do it again. So
that's definitely a first on the podcast. We haven't had anybody with QVC fame. So, man, that's a good one. So, Phil, what about, you have a book or something you could recommend to our listeners? I mean, we anything, podcast, blog or article or something that you might share that might be.
When I walk, I have a little MP3 player, and I listen to books on tape.
Yeah.
My favorite authors are Lee Child, Jack Reacher.
Oh, yeah.
And John Grisham. There's nothing that he writes that isn't great.
Okay, very good.
And a little bit of James Patterson.
All right, very good.
I download them from the library and thoroughly enjoy walking and listening.
Yeah, that's a good endorsement for the library too, because that's another organization we had on that I was stunned at all the resources. I mean, I had no idea, frankly, and I should, but I just didn't. Theresa, how would you answer that question? Anything you could recommend?
I'm currently reading 29 Gifts. It was a book that was a gift from my BFF, and it's great.
29 gifts. All right. Lyn, how about you?
My favorite read of the summer, and if anybody's got time now, what a romp, what a great book, West with Giraffes by Linda Rutledge.
West as in direction?
Yes.
West with giraffes.
It's a 1930s story that the seed of it is true. So some giraffes were headed to somewhere in the U.S., and they were caught in a hurricane on their ship. It came limping in, and then they were transported. San Diego Zoo agreed to take them, and they had to build a special truck to transport them all the way across the U.S. in the 1930s.
Sounds like real life Madagascar or something. That's funny. Okay, I'm gonna have to check that one out. That sounds
My
interesting.
wife has also read that book and absolutely loved it.
Okay, well, that's 2 endorsements. Okay, so appreciate that. But yeah, I'm a big reader, so that's a question I just like to hear. And I've read multiple books that have been suggested by our guests, so I do appreciate that greatly. So we also appreciate you indulging us on those Gaston County questions. So just a few more questions, and we'll get wrapped up here.
Can I plug my podcast?
Oh, absolutely, you can.
Gaston's great.
Yes, I agree.
All right, we can shut this one down. That's we can finish on that. Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Lyn, maybe stay with you. Besides the Rotary Community Garden, why would you say Gaston County is such a great place?
We have so many wonderful things happening here. I recently took the course to become a Master Gardener, and the Extension Master Gardener program of Gaston County is just amazing. There's over 100 people that are Master Gardeners here. We meet monthly. There's always an informative speaker and talk. I've learned so much about the community through that. I love our local library. There's so much stuff going on there, not just the seed bank, but so many programs, readers, theater, different things, different shows. They do a great job. We've got a good school system here. I'm always listening. My daughter works in Mecklenburg County, and boy, just comparatively, our smaller, more agile school system here, I think, is great for kids. Of course, a lot of us here at this table go to First United Methodist right here on Franklin, and it is a wonderful place and a community leader. All kind of wonderful things are happening there.
Well, I appreciate that. And just to piggyback on her comment about the library, it was episode number 34. If you want to learn more about the Gaston County Library, I think, unless you're really involved with the library, I think you'll be surprised at some of what you might hear and learn about the library. So thank you, Lyn, for sharing that. Theresa, what about, how would you answer that question?
Just the people.
Yeah, that's a common theme, and I agree. And kind of to Lyn's comment earlier about so many people that come here don't want to leave, right? And I think that's a testament to the people and how we make our community in general makes people feel when they do come here. So thank you. Phil, how would you answer that one?
Like I mentioned initially at the introduction, I had an opportunity to come to this area years and years ago. And living in Massachusetts, it's old, it's in decline, it's coming down here was refreshing.
It's above the Mason-Dixon line.
It was refreshing. People were nice, friendly, and like I said, I have an opportunity to move my family and raise my family down here. I took the opportunity and never regretted it.
Very good.
Never regretted it. Hiking trails, parks, Catawba Creek Golf Course, all great.
Yeah,
great
it's a unique.
things.
We have a lot of unique amenities as well. I mean, close to the mountains, close to the beach, and I think it's a very unique county. So, Phil, I'm going to answer this. I'm going to ask this next question. Start with you, so we don't give Lyn the first shot at this one. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
You know, I thought about that initially, and I really couldn't think of anything other than one of the things I do in retirement is golf. Yeah. It's an excellent outdoor recreation for retirees, and relying on that, I would say get professional guidance when you're learning to golf.
That's funny.
And not just your buddy showing you what to do, how to do it.
That's probably a really good point. Yeah, that's funny. Oh, man. Theresa, how would you answer that question?
Oh, I got so many things that I should have told that I needed to tell myself then, or I wish I had listened to people tell me. But, just don't take yourself so seriously. This too shall pass. But also just to go outside your box, learn stuff that you think you have no interest in, or give it a shot anyway.
Okay, that's good. I agree. When I was 20, I was so laser focused on things that really weren't that important, it seems like, looking back now. And I could have learned a little more about other things for sure. Lyn, what about you?
I have to agree with Theresa. I think I was too kind of intimidated to put myself out there much and try new things and ask questions that I thought other people might think were silly or stupid. Just go. People want to let you know, explore different activities. And of course, I wish that I'd been 20 instead of 35 before I really got into the world of the outdoors and nature.
Well, I think it's, how would I put this? I know when I was, to your point about asking questions, or I think after I got older, I've learned that, there's so many people that we have no idea what's going on. And nobody else does either half the time. So that's why we're learning together and asking so many questions is so important. So, again, I appreciate those answers and questions. So before we finish up here, Lyn, you have laid out a few things here on the table that I'm going to have to ask about.
Yes.
And you can hold them up. Remember, we're on YouTube.
Oh, that's right.
Much to your chagrin, we are on YouTube. And these are some type of cards.
Yes. So this year, a local artist, Grady Pearson, came to the garden and made 5 different paintings of the garden in season. So there's different views. These are all completely original, Gaston County. And he contributed these to us. We have made them into a beautiful set of 10 note cards.
Okay.
And that is one of our fundraisers for this year. They're hot off the presses from a local printing company. And so those are available for sale. It's $20 for 10 beautiful note cards.
So where can they be found?
So this is we want you to volunteer. We want you to be a part of this. We want you to buy these note cards and learn about us. We have a website. It is rcgog.org.
Okay.
You can look at the full website. We have a Facebook page, Rotary Community Garden of Gastonia, and everything's there. And we also have Instagram. It's a little harder to get your name sometimes, so ours on this one is Gastonia_community garden.
Okay.
You can get in touch with us through any of those, and you can learn a lot more about the garden and buy our note cards.
Yeah, very good. Isn't there a fundraiser or a bigger fundraiser that you guys have once a year, or am I?
We have had a fundraiser each year, and except for the 2 years of COVID when we were unable to.
Right.
So this past year, we were able to have our fundraiser in May on Kentucky Derby Day.
Okay.
Called Big Hats and Bow Ties, and everyone dressed up, and it was wonderful. And we actually made enough money that we won't have to do another big fundraiser this year. It'll probably be next year. And it's always an event in the garden with food, music, and it's wonderful.
All right, so that's very good. So this has really been good. Any last words? I know the two of you look like y'all brought like 25 pages each of notes. Is there anything else that, my experience is that oftentimes guests will say, oh, I wish I had talked about this, or I wish I had talked about that afterwards, because it does go by fast and it's easy to forget things. But is there anything else you guys would like to share? Or you've done you've done a great job. You've covered the garden in great detail. But anything else you'd like to share before we close this one out?
I just would like to say that we all love talking about the garden. We can do it over and over. And we would love to get more people involved. And in this short of time, it's hard to really explain everything that's involved.
Sure it is. Yeah.
So if you do go on those, any of those places, our website, we have somebody that checks that, and the questions or whatever will be forwarded to us, and we're glad to meet you at the garden, show
Okay.
you around, show you, what would be involved, and that's the main thing.
What about, I mean, if there's anybody listening that might be part of an organization that y'all might do a presentation for or something, is that something y'all might do? Other Rotary clubs or boards of directors of other organizations or anything like that? Or have y'all done that before, or did I just stick my foot in my mouth?
No, we will definitely
that.
do that. We, Theresa and I have our little dog and pony act, and we will come wherever you want us to speak.
Absolutely.
We do a training, before
Okay.
the season starts for the people that have signed up. But Lyn will be glad to, and Phil.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, guys, I appreciate your time, and just kind of a last thing. Oh, I almost forgot that we do have sweet potato pie, correct?
Correct.
That I don't know if you can see it on YouTube, but actually it's just for me. So I'm the only. I'll give a report on next week's episode that we record about how good this is, I'm sure, or take it home and Janet and my kids can enjoy it as well. So unless Naomi wants to fight over it,
And Stephen, guess where that sweet potato came from?
not the garden.
Yes.
Absolutely. This was about the size of a large cantaloupe.
Wow.
Sweet potato. And some of our receivers were saying, we don't know if that'd still be good or tender. So we have a wonderful grower. His name's Godfrey Idokpia, who is growing for us now. He took it home, boiled it up. His wife made this sweet potato pie, actually 2 full large pies out of this one
Wow.
sweet potato. So we wanted to let you try it.
Well, we appreciate that. It will be tried, I can assure you, at some point soon. But I personally, I know what you guys have done in the community, not just with the garden, with other things as well. So I'm grateful for individuals like yourself who do a lot and make our community a better place. And so I appreciate that very much. And being involved with First Methodist, I see a lot of what the two of y'all especially do. And so we're going to finish up here with my normal. I normally have a book or something I recommend. It's kind of a book, but we were recording this on December 21st, so Christmas is going to be here in a couple of days. So I'm actually going to talk about my favorite Christmas movie. I'm really struggling with some vocabulary today, but it was from a book by a gentleman named Gene Shepard, and it's A Christmas Story. And if you haven't seen that, I think most people have probably seen it by now in 2022, but I actually came fond of that movie back in the mid-'80s. And there's actually Gene Shepard, the author, has a cameo in the movie if you haven't seen it. And that actually brings me to one last question that I wrote down here, and I forgot to ask it earlier, and even Naomi's going to have to answer this question. Maybe I'll start with Naomi. What's your favorite Christmas movie? I know it's not It's a Wonderful Life. We already have.
Not that one either.
No, we know your displeasure for Elf.
Oh.
I just sprung that on you, didn't I? You need to let me go next and think about it. All right, Lyn.
Thanksgiving night, we always watch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Okay, that's good. I can quote most of that. And
Elf.
Elf is a classic.
I can quote it.
A Christmas Story, you'll shoot your eye out.
Yes, that's actually what I'm talking about. All right, so here's your chance, Naomi.
I think the most recent one I watched, and this is going to be funny, it's Medea. I don't know if you know who that is.
Oh, I do.
Medea and
Christmas,
something.
yes.
I can't remember what it is, though, but that's the most recent one I've watched, and it's hilarious.
I'm hoping that our microphones aren't picking up what you're saying over there.
Or Holiday. This is going to sound crazy. Holiday in Handcuffs. That's a funny one, too.
Not only am not sure about this, I've never even heard of either one of those. So I am questioning.
Holiday in Handcuffs comes on Hallmark.
Yeah, it's got to be the Hallmark Channel.
We're hoping so.
Yeah, exactly. Holiday in Handcuffs. This is a family-friendly podcast, Naomi.
Family-friendly movie.
Okay, we're gonna move on from the Holiday in Handcuffs. So if you couldn't pick the microphones, couldn't pick that up for our listeners. Yeah, that's what she said was her favorite Christmas movie is Holiday in Handcuffs. Okay, we're gonna move on to my quote that I leave. Again, I'm sticking with a Christmas theme, so to speak, and one of my favorite stories, books. I think, as a matter of fact, if you listen to last week's episode, I think this is the book I shared as my favorite book was A Christmas Carol. But Ebenezer Scrooge, and Charles Dickens said, "I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year." I chose that because it would be nice, in my opinion, if this feeling that we get around the holiday season, maybe between Thanksgiving and the New Year, if we could keep that feeling and that all year, it would just be nice, wouldn't it? Just life happens and we just can't seem to always keep that 12 months out of the year. But, if you've ever read A Christmas Carol or seen one of the movies, I would strongly encourage it, because Ebenezer Scrooge is somebody who saw the light and was able to maybe turn that around and live that life consistently all the year around. So wish everybody actually, I should have done this last week, because this will be after Christmas so I can't really wish anybody a Merry Christmas because it's the week after. Happy New Year. Yes, this will be broadcast before the New Year. Maybe we are going to have to edit this one. So to our listeners out there, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast. And please don't hesitate to contact us at our email, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms. And according to Naomi, please give us a 5-star rating. That helps us get noticed. And thanks again to Lyn, Theresa, and Phil for being our guests today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Naomi Hunt and Amy Anderson from GSM Services, and edited here locally by the Sumner Group. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.